Let me ask you something. Have you ever had that nagging feeling that your broker might be secretly betting against you? You know, that fear that your loss is actually their gain? It's a really common concern. Well, today we are pulling back the curtain on a business model designed to prevent that exact problem. It's called the A-Book. We're going to break down exactly how these brokers make money and, more importantly, why it really matters to you. So here's how we're going to do it. First, we'll dive right into that potential conflict of interest at the heart of some brokerage models. Then, we'll explain the A-Book and how it's different. We'll even follow a single trade from start to finish to see it in action. After that, we'll look at how those small profits add up for the broker, and we'll wrap up by connecting all of this back to you, the trader. All right, let's just get right to it. The relationship between a trader and their broker. Well, it can feel a little murky sometimes, right? This is the million-dollar question. It's everything. Because think about it. If the answer is yes, then your incentives are completely 100% opposed. From the moment you open an account, you're on opposite sides of the table. And that brings us to the two basic models. On one side, you've got the B-Book. This is the source of that fear. The broker literally takes the other side of your trade. They are betting against you. If you lose, they win. But there's an alternative, the A-Book. In this model, the broker acts more like a bridge. They just pass your trade along to the bigger market, which means they have zero financial stake in whether you win or lose. So let's zoom in on that alternative, because the A-Book isn't just a different way of processing trades. It's a completely different philosophy about how to do business. So what is an A-Book broker exactly? Well, here's the simplest definition. It's a broker that does not make money from their customers' losses. How? The moment you place a trade, they offload that risk to someone else, an external liquidity provider. By doing that, they take themselves out of the equation. Their interests are no longer in direct conflict with yours. Okay, so if they're not making money when you lose, where does the money come from? It's actually pretty simple. It boils down to two main ways. They either charge a small, fixed commission on each trade, or they add a tiny markup to the spread. And here's a fantastic way to think about it. Imagine your broker is like a grocery store, but for liquidity. The store buys apples from a farmer at a wholesale price. Then they put those apples on the shelf and sell them to you at a slightly higher retail price. That small difference is their profit. An A-Book broker does the exact same thing. They get a price from their liquidity provider and offer it to you with a small markup. That markup is their profit, plain and simple. Now that all sounds great in theory, right? But let's put it to the test. Let's actually follow a single trade from beginning to end and see exactly where the money goes. So let's meet our trader, Elsa. She decides to buy a pretty large position in Euro USD. Now, the second she clicks that buy button, her A-Book broker doesn't bet against her. No. Instead, they instantly turn around and place the exact same buy order with their liquidity provider. This perfectly hedges them. They're totally insulated from what happens next. All right, scenario number 1. The trade goes Elsa's way. The price of Euro USD starts climbing. And boom, it's a winning trade. Elsa closes out her position for a nice profit of 98 pips. But here's the really interesting part. The broker also made a profit. Remember that tiny markup they added? That was 2 pips, which in this case earned them a clean $600. So when the client wins, the A-Book broker also wins. But what happens when things go south? Let's run the tape again, but this time the trade goes against Elsa. Okay, this time the price drops, and Elsa ends up with a pretty big loss. Now, if this were a B-Book broker, they would have just pocketed her entire loss. But what happens with our A-Book broker? Their net profit is, you guessed it, still exactly the same, $600. Because their profit was locked in from that initial markup, what happened to Elsa's trade made zero difference to their bottom line. And this quote from the source material just sums it all up perfectly. The broker's money comes only from those markups. It completely removes that potential conflict of interest because they make the same amount no matter what. Win or lose, it doesn't matter to them. So you might be thinking, okay, if they're only making a couple of pips here and there, how on earth do they stay in business? Well, the answer is a game of massive volume. Let's shrink this down. On one tiny trade, a single micro lot, the broker might only make this much, 10 cents. I mean, come on, you can't build a company on 10-cent profits, right? As you can see, the A-Book model only works at a huge scale. The whole business depends on getting tons of customers who are placing tons of trades. And this table really shows you how that math works. Just look at that middle column there. With 100 active customers, the broker might pull in $1,000 a month. Not bad. But scale that up to 10,000 customers, and suddenly that revenue jumps to $100,000 a month. Those tiny profits multiply fast. And this chart just makes that growth crystal clear. It's not about making a fortune from one person. It's about making a tiny slice from thousands and thousands of people. It's a volume game, pure and simple. Okay, so we've gone through the numbers and the mechanics, but let's bring this all home. Let's talk about the most important thing. What does any of this actually mean for you? Well, it changes the entire dynamic. First off, your broker is no longer your enemy. They're actually incentivized to keep you happy and keep you trading because their success is tied to your activity, not to your failure. And think about it. Traders who are profitable tend to stick around longer, trade more often, and trade in bigger sizes. That makes them the perfect customer. And really, it all comes down to this one simple, powerful idea. A book brokers want you to be profitable. A successful trader is their best possible client. For once, your interests and your broker's interests are perfectly aligned. You're on the same team. Look, understanding your broker's business model isn't just some academic exercise. It's absolutely fundamental to your success as a trader. So that leaves us with one final thought. Now that you know the difference, now that you know how it all works, what questions are you going to ask your broker?